Welcome to Political Pulse. Today I'm joined with Rohan for the Political Pulse on trickle-down economics. Last week we talked about Keynesian economics, and this week we'll segue into trickle-down economics. So get ready to get your brain cows milked and strap in. Let's start with the history of trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics, also associated with supply-side economics, is a theory that claims that benefits for the wealthy trickle down to everyone else. Heavily supported by the Republican Party, these benefits include tax cuts on businesses, high-income earners, capital gains, and dividends.
This was originally found under the Reagan administration and was widely associated with Reaganomics. The overall idea of this theory is giving money to the rich, and their increase in wealth would move down the social ladder to the bottom, making everyone else wealthier. This is done by tax cuts and giving the money back to the rich so they can put it into the economy and stimulate the market, with investors buying more companies or stocks. Banks will increase lending, owners will invest in their operations and hire workers.
This sounds like the perfect solution, right?
Although there have been previous instances where we have seen a successful implementation of trickle-down economics, there are equal amounts of times where we have seen it end in vain. So PK and I will give you the political pulse on the pros and cons of trickle-down economics, so you, the viewers, can decide whether we should utilize this theory or not. I'm just going to go right in and say trickle-down economic works, and start with the 1980 recession. As I'm sure you know, the tightening of monetary policies by the US and other nations was a primary culprit in this downturn. To create a better economy, Reagan implemented trickle-down economics, which vastly increased the productivity and health of the economy. Reagan cut taxes from 70% for those earning $108,000 or more to 28% for anyone with an income of at least $18,500.
You might be right about trickle-down economics working. However, it is not the only reason for the recovery. The main problem of trickle-down economics is that the rich are just saving their money, and they're not putting it back into the economy to stimulate and create things like job opportunities. Overall, the rich are selfish. Reagan had also increased government spending by 2.5% a year. He had almost tripled the federal debt from $997 billion in 1981 to $2.85 trillion in 1989, and I will mention Reagan again later.
Your point has some merit. However, trickle-down economics also worked during the George W. Bush, where he'd used it during the 2001 recession. He cut income taxes with the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act. That resulted in the end of the recession in November of that year. So it's no coincidence that the economy returned to good standing when trickle-down economics was implemented.
When the Trump administration implemented tax cuts, the top 1% of the country will have an average tax cut of more than $60,000 in 2025, compared to an average tax cut of less than $500 for households in the bottom 60%, according to the Tax Policy Center. These tax cuts are only benefiting the rich, which is the very top 1% in America, and we cannot trust the rich to speak for the rest of the country. This sounds a lot like the elitist theory. However, in this case, instead of running the government, they are holding an immense amount of power regarding the economy.
President Donald Trump signed into law the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on December 22, 2017, which cut personal tax rates for all tax brackets, and personal exemptions and corporations received a tax cut to 21%, which showed that this act benefited the upper, middle, and lower class. This shows how tax cuts also apply to other social classes and doesn't only favor the 1%.
There is no indication of a wage surge in 2018, either compared to history or GDP growth. The Joint Committee on Taxation and the Federal Reserve Board found that workers below the 90th percentile of their firm's income scale, a group whose incomes were below roughly $114,000 in 2016, which is considered the middle upper class, saw no change in earnings from the rate cut. Earnings did, however, increase for the workers in the top 10% and increased sharply for firm managers and executives. So in the economy itself and the different classes, it only helps a small percentage of people which run the largest businesses. I do not see how this can possibly help the lower classes.
Trickle-down economics would help the lower classes, as the corporations will be more likely to expand and create more jobs, lowering the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate under Reagan also went down to 5%, which was a big feat during the recession. It even prevailed under Trump. The poverty rate and unemployment rate reached their lowest levels in 50 years, with all-time lows in unemployment among African Americans and Hispanic workers, and those without a high school degree. the bottom 20% of earners saw their federal tax rate fall to its lowest level in 40 years, and Americans earning under $100,000 received an average tax cut of 16%. The share of taxes paid by the top 1% of households increased, while the tax burdens paid by the lower income earners decreased.
This just in. We have seen a man in Taiwan steal a bill.
How do you steal a bill?
Like, he literally just took it and ran.
Nah, that's filibustering to the next level. To be honest, it is better than listening to the Star Wars script. Who knows what he's going to do with that?
I mean, he's probably going to hide it. But let's open things up to our live chat and have some people join us on the call.
We have a caller from Central Jersey.
Is that even a real place?
Okay, real Bruce Springsteen 41. What do you have to say?
Hey guys, I love your podcast. They really inform me about current events. I have a question for Rohan. What happens if there are tax cuts for companies and they end up holding their money instead of spending it? Wouldn't this increase the income inequality in America and cause a further recession? You're going to leave the bottom percent dancing in the dark, and this is going to lead them to the streets of Philadelphia.
Yes, you're partly correct. However, your idea is also wrong. If big companies hold onto the excess money they got from the tax cuts, it would hurt the economy, as prices would increase due to the supply of money and the economy decreasing. However, it is not smart for these companies to hold on to their excess cash. These corporations always try to make a profit, and hoarding their money isn't in their best interest. Also, the government can lower interest rates to get people to spend more money, and this will cause corporations to use their newfound money to expand their businesses, create more jobs, and stimulate the economy.
But after President Bush implemented tax cuts, which ultimately played a factor in the 2008 economic collapse, with conservatives with such high hopes, economist Danny Yeagan has found the steep cuts in dividend tax rates signed into law by President Bush in 2003 did not increase corporate investment or worker pay. So I'm not seeing any positive benefits from tax cuts. You're going to need to give me a little more, Rohan. We know history tends to repeat itself, and we've seen massive failures with Trump and Bush.
Speaking of history, we have seen it flourish under the Reagan administration. Based on the idea of supply-side economics, trickle-down economics worked under the Reagan administration. Reagan believed that a strong private sector would ultimately benefit all levels of society, proved correct during his time in office. A quick fact about how good trickle-down economics is: middle-class income increased 11% after adjustment for inflation, while nearly 20 million new jobs were created. Okay, moving on from that, we have another caller from New York, Alexander Hamilton Lover 99.
Hey guys, huge fan of the podcast. I see you guys are debating back and forth pretty heavily. How do you think we can implement trickle-down economics into our current day agenda while making it work this time? Like Federalist 10, how can you guys and the government compromise?
Not sure why you said compromise 3 times, but still a great question. Alex, personally I believe that we should start with tax cuts for high-income earners and corporations. This would incentivize investment spending and spending in the economy. Also, deregulation is important because it will promote entrepreneurship.
While that is a promising perspective, there are some issues. The problem is, what do we do if the corporations and high earners hold on to their money? Well, I think that having an incentive for the high earners and corporations to spend will ensure spending. This could be achieved by lowering capital tax gains to encourage spending on the stock market. However, even with these incentives, this will not pass unless it shows an equal benefit for the poor.
Okay, I think that we can also give tax cuts based on a percentage of your income. This would be an expansion of the earned income tax cuts, which would cut taxes by an average of $800 per year for 19 million middle and lower class working individuals or couples. I think we take a similar approach to what Kennedy did with the Revenue Act of 1964. He proposed reducing the marginal tax rate from 91% to 70%. This would benefit corporations and individuals in the lower classes. His efforts to lower taxes increased the disposable income that families and individuals had, therefore stimulating the economy with their increased spending.
Okay, in conclusion, we will set an equal percentage for tax cuts for all people and give incentives such as lowering interest rates, deregulation, and lowering capital tax gains for people to spend that money to better the health of the economy.
All right, another successful debate today, And unfortunately, that is all the time we had for today. Follow us on all platforms at Political Pulse. Always a pleasure debating with my good friend. And finally, a message from our sponsors, from Bone Airlines.
Fly high, fly luxurious, and most importantly, fly safe.